Okay, next is Jahangir. You can see here Jahangir and Meher Noor Jahan. No, the campaigns actually continued. What all the campaigns that was done by Akbar, it was actually continued by Jahangir. So Sisodia, ruler of Mewar, Amar Singh accepted the Mughal service. But the campaigns against the Ahoms, Sikhs and Ahmednagar was really not that successful. So here also you could see Emperor Shah Jahan, Prince Khurram, son of Jahangir, started to rebel. Why do we speak of Noor Jahan? Noor Jahan is a person who, I mean, women of intelligence. She actually was a very loyal person, and she was really supportive to the monarch. You could see even her efforts to convince Shah Jahan was not that successful. To honor her support to the monarch, you could see Jahangir actually issuing silver coins. We also see documents issued on Meher-Nizar's name. Giving orders to the subjects. Next we have Shah Jahan. So again you could see, the campaigns continued, but here this time in Deccan. Okay, so now here you could see when Shah Jahan was doing a campaign here in Deccan, you could also see people rebelling against him from the northern side. So Afghan noble Khan Jahan Lodi rebelled and defeated Shah Jahan. So again you could see campaigns were going on. Now, it's not an easy task of building such a great empire in one day. So you could see campaigns against Ahmednagar, the Bundelas were defeated and Orcha seized. In northwest, the campaign to seize Balkh from the Uzbeks was really unsuccessful. Kandahar is being lost to Safavids, and you could see in 1632 Ahmednagar was finally annexed. So again a confusion, a conflict in the family. You could see here Aurangzeb was again a problem to Shah Jahan. So now you could see there was a conflict over succession happening. In this, Aurangzeb became victorious, killing all other brothers. You could see even Dara Shukar was killed, and then Shah Jahan was imprisoned for the rest of his life. This is Aurangzeb. So next person, you could see in 1663 he actually went on a campaign into Ahoms in the northeast, defeated, but Ahoms rebelled against Mughals in 1680. You could see all these problems prevailed. Whoever got lost, they started to rebel against them, which was the main reason for the declination of Mughals. So you could see in northwest, campaigns against the Yusufites and the Sikhs were temporarily successful. It means again they came back for a rebel. So Mughal intervention in the internal policies of the Rathore Rajputs of Mewar also led to the rebellion against Aurangzeb. So campaigns against your Maratha chieftain Shivaji was initially successful, but you could see Aurangzeb actually insulted Shivaji, which made Shivaji to come back and rebel against Aurangzeb. So all here you could see people coming back, doing a rebellion against your Mughal empire. So here again for the succession, you could see Aurangzeb's son Prince Akbar rebelling against Aurangzeb. So you know what he did? He actually got the support of Marathas like Shivaji and the Deccan Sultanate to fight against Aurangzeb. So at last he fled to Iran. So after Akbar's rebellion, you know what Aurangzeb did? He actually took a personal in charge over the armies. So he sent armies to the Deccan Sultanate, who was who helped Prince Akbar. And then in 85 and in 87, Bijapur and Golconda was annexed. In 1698, he personally went on a campaign against the Marathas. In this campaign, you could see the Marathas actually used guerrilla warfare. It actually means that hiding behind and fighting a war with the people. So they were behind, and they came in forward and they fought with Aurangzeb. So this was really this really forced Aurangzeb to have a loss against the Marathas. So you could see here, because of all these people, there was a constant rebellion from different sides for Aurangzeb. Sikhs in the northeast, Sikhs in northern India, Jats, Satnamis and Ahoms in the northeast, and in the Deccan you could see Marathas actually rebelling against Aurangzeb. So, and also you had conflicts between his sons for the succession. So I actually spoke about this tradition of succession in the beginning. So next we'll speak about relation with other rulers. So first thing what Mughals did was when they came here, they actually want the other kings to accept their authority. But some people did not accept. Whoever refused to accept the authority, actually, so against them you could see a campaign was started. So the same way number of campaigns were done, but at the same time some people, some kings voluntarily came and accepted the authority of Mughals. So you could see Rajputs is one example for that. They had marriage relations with Mughals. So mother of Jahangir was a Kachwa princess, daughter of Rajput ruler of Amber, present day Jaipur. The same way mother of Shah Jahan is the Rathore princess, daughter of Rajput ruler of Marwar, present day Jodhpur. So what did they do when they came and joined Mughal empire? They were given high positions. They were not actually totally, their land was not taken. Their land was actually given back, but they were given a position in their empire. But when we speak about the relations with other rulers, we have to mention about Aurangzeb and Shivaji, because you could see Aurangzeb actually insulted Shivaji, and really this was a problem for Aurangzeb in the future days. So then we come to Mansab Das and your Jagirdars. So Mansab Das are persons who hold a mansab, means a position or rank. How this position or rank was graded? It was a grading system to fix the salary and the military responsibility of a mansabdar. So you could see rank and salary were determined by a term called Zat, which means a numerical value. Higher the Zat, larger the salary for the mansabdars. Next we have the Savar, the cavalryman. It actually means the mansabdar should hold a number of horsemen. So if they have 5,000 soldiers, they will be given a salary of 5,000. But for this cavalryman, for each cavalryman, an extra additional pay of ₹2 was given. So if they have 1,000 cavalrymen, an extra 2,000 rupees was paid to them. Okay. So next we have Jagirdars. These mansabdars actually received salary as revenue assignments called Jagirs. So the head of Jagirs were actually called as Jagirdars. But these Jagirdars or mansabdars, they never went to the land directly, because they were actually residing in some other places. So we had another persons called Zamindars, who actually collected the taxes from the peasants. They were the local chieftains. So Akbar had a revenue minister called Toda Mal. He was a person who really had a survey on the crops. For the 10 years the survey on the crop yield. So on that idea he actually fixed tax on each crop on each area. Okay, so when we say that tax name was Zak, but this was not really a better idea, because you could see the harvest of this year may not be the same as last year. So the peasants really developed a poverty because of paying tax to the emperors. So we have next is the Akbarnama. Akbarnama is a book written by Abul Fazl. He is a courtier of Akbar. So it actually consists of 3 volumes. The first volume deals about Akbar's ancestors, and the second the events of Akbar's reign. The third is the Ain-i-Akbari. Ain-i-Akbari is an important document of Mughal Empire, because you could see all the administration, the household, army, revenues, and even the geography and everything are presented in this Ain-i-Akbari. You could see it is a book which is really rich in statistical details. Even it really states about what Toda Mal actually spoke about the crops, or each and every minute details of statistics are given in this Ain-i-Akbari. So next we'll come to Akbar's policies. So Akbar policy, how actually he divided the empire into units, and how he was able to rule the empire. So first is actually Ain-i-Akbari speaks about this administration in detail. So empire was divided into province, called Subas. Subedar is the head of this Subas. Political and military functions was held by this Subedar. Next is Diwan, the financial officer. Next we'll have Bakshi, the military paymaster, who actually supported Subedars in maintaining military responsibilities. Then Sadar, the minister in charge of religious and charitable patronage. Then you have Faujdars, military commanders. Kotwal, the town police commanders. The important policy, the main policy of Akbar is, you could see, Sul-e-Kul. So this is actually a principle where all religions was accepted as one in the Mughal Empire. So you could see Akbar is a person who really wanted to have discussions on so many things. He actually wanted to discuss on social, political, religious. He really had a very good idea on all these things. So he really offered people like the ulemas, the Zoroastrians, Jesuits, the Catholic priests, everybody to come to his place, and they had discussions about the religions. So it actually happened in Ibadat Khana. So Sul-e-Kul is a system where you could see the universal acceptable principles were accepted by Akbar. The best ethics, the honesty, justice, peace, like that. So you could see that it was actually considered as the universal peace. So the system, the policy was followed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan. So Mughals in the 17th century and after. So when we see to the history, we can see international travelers who came to India have described about these Mughal emperors in various ideas. Like you could see, one is they have said it's a fabled land of wealth, because you could see so many wealth being considered here in India, even the Kohinoor diamond, like that. But when you see to the second part of Mughals, you could see they were poverty. Why this poverty? Because of the revenue assignments. You could see here, the peasants were really going on poorer and poorer, whereas these Jagis, the Jagidars, were becoming rich and the richer. The artisans, the normal, the day-to-day artisans were not getting any money because of the force that these Zamindars and the Jagidars gave to them to pay the taxes. So because of this, you could see there was two distinct communities, one the richer and the other poorer in Mughals. So and above all, you could see because of Aurangzeb's succession, you could see there was a decline in Mughals. And so because of this declination, new dynasties came in, like your Hyderabad and Awadh. But these people are the nobles, the people, the Rajput rulers, the persons who were given a position in the empire, like the Mansabdars. These people only emerged because they became powerful day by day. So these people started to build a new dynasty. Thank you.